Hi, welcome to our comparative anatomy video where we compare the structure of a frog versus a worm with Tiffany, Melanie, Carla, and Sarah.
For the background of the frog, their taxonomic name is Rhinophoreri, and they're part of the phylum Chordate. Their kingdom is Animalia, their phylum is Chordata, their class is Amphibia, their order is Anura, their family is Ranidae, and their genus is Lithobates. They typically live in ponds or marshes in Mexico and Costa Rica, and they're secondary consumers, so they're eaten by herons, snakes, raccoons, and otters, and they usually eat small invertebrates such as beetles, ants, flies, and worms. And they usually mate during the spring, and they lay 300 to 6,500 eggs in breeding ponds.
The taxonomic name for the earthworm is Lumbricus terrestris. They are part of the kingdom Animalia, the phylum Annelida, the class Clitellata, the order Haplotuxida, the family Lumbricidae, the genus Lumbricus, the species Terrestris. They live in the soil, such as the soil of gardens, farms, or fields. And on the food chain, they are a decomposer. They are usually eaten by rats, birds, foxes, snakes, and other larger animals. And earthworms themselves eat seeds, plants, leaves, and other parts of the soil. Their mating, they mate as soon as 6 weeks old, and they are hermaphrodites, meaning they have both male and female reproductive parts.
So this is a side-by-side comparison of our frog and worm. So as you can see, two things that are similar are they both have intestines, and so you can see the frog intestine right here, and our worm's intestine is right here, filled with soil. And they also both have hearts. So the frog has one heart here, while the worm has many hearts, as shown here.
The frog has a reproduction system which involves ovaries, oviducts, uterus, and cloaca. Eggs are produced in the ovaries. They move through oviducts into the uterus to the cloaca of the body. The frog also has an excretory system, cleaning from right to left to clean blood.
The earthworm's reproductive system. The earthworm is unique in the fact that it has both female and male reproductive organs in their anterior part. Fertilization also happens after mating instead of during, like in most animals. When the sperm is traded off from each worm, the sperm is then stored in the 4 sperm receptacles. And when the worm goes to lay their egg later on in the soil, usually only one out of all the eggs that they lay fully develops. Their excretory system consists of the nephridia. There is 1 pair per segment, and they usually open to secrete their urine.
The frog has a highly specialized sticky tongue to grab prey to eat, and it goes through their mouth to the esophagus, to the stomach, to the small intestine, which is attached to the liver, pancreas, gallbladder, and bile duct, and then goes to the large intestine, which is connected to the rectum. And most of their digestion occurs in the small intestine.
The digestive system of the earthworm has a mouth, it has a muscular pharynx, it has an esophagus, the crop where food is stored, the gizzard where food is grinded, and it has 1 intestine. And most of the digestion of the earthworm happens in this 1 intestine.
The respiratory system takes place in the lungs and skin. Before frogs become frogs, they are tadpoles that have gills after they replace with lungs to breathe on land. The air moves through nostrils to windpipe into the lungs.
Unlike frogs, earthworms can only breathe through their skin, and so oxygen diffuses across their skin because they do not have any lungs. So as you can see in this diagram, it says diffusion takes place through the thin skin of the worm, and so they're able to do this oxygen diffusion because their skin is only a few cell layers thick. And as demonstrated here, oxygen goes in, CO2 diffuses out. And in this diagram for the frog, you can see talking about the nostril and actually going in the lungs and the skin.
The frog has a closed circulatory system that includes the heart and a complex network of veins and arteries. The heart has 2 upper chambers and 1 lower chamber, and the spleen destroys old red blood cells and then removes debris from the bloodstream.
The earthworm also has a closed circulatory system, so it has dorsal blood vessels that carry blood to the front of the worm and ventral blood vessels that carry blood to the back of the worm. Again, you can see that in this diagram. It has the hearts and then the ventral vessels. And we call it a closed circulatory system because it does not interact with any other system of the worm, like excretory. It's just its own thing.
The frog's nervous systems contain a brain, spinal cord, and nerves. The brain region controls different functions. Their eyelids move horizontally. They don't have external ears. They have hairs in their ears to interpret the sounds.
Earthworms, on the other hand, have a very simple nervous system that has 2 parts. It has the cerebral ganglion, which is the brain, that connects to the ventral nerve cord that goes throughout their entire body. And again, in this diagram, you can see simple brain and then the nerve cord going throughout the entire body.
Some unique characteristics of the frog are that they have lungs or gills in tadpoles. They have both a small and a large intestine. They breathe through their skin and their lungs. They lay eggs during reproduction. They have arms and legs and a complex nervous system.
Some things that are unique to the earthworm are that they're hermaphroditic, and so they have both male and female sex organs. They only have 1 small intestine, whereas the frog has 2 intestines. They have no lungs. Again, they only breathe using diffusion across their skin, and they have a very simple nervous system, as we saw in the previous slide. But some things that both of these animals have are they both multicellular, they both have bilateral symmetry, they both have the ability to breathe through their skin, they both have closed circulatory systems, they both have a mouth and an esophagus. So this is our phylogenetic tree. This is copied directly from one of the homework problems, so hopefully this looks familiar. As you can see, we have annelids, or earthworms here, and we have frogs or chordata here. So these are the phylum they're a part of. And if you trace back to where those 2 lines connect, or the last time they really meet, you can see this red dot. And so there's a reference that we have called the Tree of Life. And according to the Tree of Life, we have guessed that the most recent common ancestor of the earthworm and the frog is a eumetazoa. So eumetazoa means having true organs. And so both worms and frogs have organs. Of course, as we mentioned, they're both multicellular. They're both bilateral. And so those are all traits that the eumetazoa had. And so that's why we believe that the last or the most recent common ancestor of these animals would be the eumetazoa, right on that part of the phylogenetic tree.
Frogs are in the Ammophila families, which also include the salamanders, toads, and newts. The frogs are descendants from the lungfish. The frog skin has been adapted to prevent water loss. They have been able to develop lungs to breathe on land.
Earthworms are part of the phylum Clitolata. So the Clitolata includes animals such as worms, ogotrates, and leeches. And so we believe that skin diffusion adapted because worms were in soil and there's less air available under the dirt. And so if you're under the dirt versus on ground, of course, there's less air, but you need air to breathe and function. So I believe that the earthworm did cell diffusion because essentially they're able to breathe with their entire body instead of just with their lungs and having one opening to breathe. They can use their entire body to get oxygen, which is incredibly helpful if you're underneath a lot of soil or dirt. These are our references, and we hope you learned something new. Thank you.